So the soles of the feet flat on the mat, knees knocked together, and then just toe heeling the feet apart until they're a comfortable distance. And taking a long, deep breath in. And as you exhale out, feeling the lower back and the pelvis, the back of the pelvis, just soften onto the mat. And seeing if you can have a sense that the top of the femurs, the top of the thigh bones are just gently dropping into the hip sockets. And one image I like for constructive rest is to imagine a pair of pants on a hanger. So the knees are on the hanger and just imagining the thighs of the pants draping in one direction and the lower legs of the pants just softly draping in the other. And taking another long deep breath in, exhaling it out, perhaps with the eyes closed, and then bring your attention to the shoulders. So in the following movements that we're going to take in the following stretches, you want to make sure that the shoulders aren't kind of muscling and over engaging, and the neck and chin and jaw aren't trying to help you with postures where their engagement or gripping won't help. It won't hinder, but they're not needed for the stretches we're about to take. And so just working the mouth a little bit, stretching it, perhaps making an O, releasing the jaw. And then if the eyes are closed, opening them up, toe heeling the feet back towards each other so that they are hips width distance apart, and feel that the outer edges of your feet are parallel to the edges of the mat. You can even touch them to make sure. And then starting to stretch the heels along the mat and keep the heels in contact with the mat as you move the legs into a straight position. Make sure that the knees don't lock out, and then take a deep breath in and bring the right knee in towards the chest. And then notice any subtle things that happen in the upper body. So the right hip might start to hike up towards the right armpit. If that happens, just gently lift the right side of your hip off the mat and move it away from the right armpit. So you're aiming for both sides of the waist equally long. And then bring your mind to the left leg. Did the toes flop out to the left? Did the thigh and knee of the left leg really lift away from the mat? If that's happening, you may want to rebend the left knee and just land the left foot on the ground. Or you just may want to put the left hand on the left hip and guide it, sort of firm it towards the mat a little bit. And then start to straighten the right leg, and it might straighten so it moves straight up towards the ceiling, or it might straighten so the foot's pointing beyond the foot end of your yoga mat. That's all fine. Make sure that the knees aren't locked out, and then push through the heel towards the ceiling, again, without locking out the knees, and perhaps supporting the back of the right thigh. And for some of you, it might feel comfortable to grab the right toe and straighten the leg. Now, if you do that, this is the moment when the shoulders and the neck and the chin and the jaw might start gripping and engaging. And so just backing off or bending the right knee slightly if that starts to happen. Take a deep breath in here and then point the toes slightly. So you'll have to let go of the toes if you're holding them, and feel how the stretch changes, moves around the biggest muscles of the body in the right leg. And then push up through the heel again one more time. And now as you exhale, keeping the left hip where it is, and you might want to put your left hand on the left hip to remind it to stay firm on the mat. Start to let the right leg move out to the right. And it's like a door opening in a door frame. So the rest of the body is the door frame. It stays steady. It stays supporting. It's just the right leg that moves out to the right. And keep it floating a little bit. You can support it by bending the right elbow, landing it on the ground, and placing the right hand to the outside of the right leg. Take a deep breath here, and then feeling that length along the inside of the right leg, and now move it back to center. And then just let it move slightly across to the left. So you're moving it towards the left side of your practice space, so the right leg's now moving across the body. And it doesn't need to go all the way to the ground. It could, if that's appealing, that's calling your body this morning. But even just slightly moving it to the left should give you a bit of a stretch along the outside of the right hip. Take one or two more breaths there, and then bring the right leg back to center, stretch it long along the mat, and shake out the legs a little bit. And then let's move to the second side, and bringing the left knee in towards the chest, and once again noting, like, does the left hip hike up towards the left armpit? If so, just realigning. Does the right leg decide it's off duty now and just like flop out to the right? In which case, make sure the right toes are pointing towards the ceiling, or bend the right leg and land the right foot on the ground. So bring your mind into all the spaces of the body, see what they're doing, and then straighten the left leg. And feeling that delicious stretch along the back of the left leg. Push up through the heel for a moment without locking the left knee. Push up through the toes for a moment. So pointing and pushing up through the heels. So feeling how different muscles engage in the foot, in the lower leg, in the upper leg. And then as you exhale, starting to bring your left leg out to the left. So gently letting it roll out. And again, you might want to put your right hand on the right hip to make sure that's not rolling up and following the left leg. Again, that image of the left leg being like a gate or a door opening, and the rest of the body being steady so that you maximize. The rest of the body wants to help you here. It does, and that's a beautiful thing. But you want to really maximize the stretch and movement that you get to according to your bone structure in the left hip. So that's what we're aiming for here. And then bring the left leg back to center and let it cross over to the right. And that can just be a small amount is all you need necessarily to get that stretch on the outside of the left hip. Hold it. And then bring the leg back to center, land the left leg on the ground, shake out the legs, and then shuffle slightly to your right on your mat and roll over so that you end up on the belly in the middle of your mat. Take a breath there, and then we're going to move towards Sphinx. So arms are parallel in front of you, elbows slightly ahead of the shoulders. Take a deep breath in, and then really engage the feet, be it the toes, be it the shoelace, the tops of your feet, the shoelace side of your feet. And on an inhale, lift the chest towards the ceiling. And then even though there's a lot happening in the back here, even though there's a lot happening in the upper chest here, like bring your mind to the front of the hips and feel like the length and the space and the stretch here. So this is one direction. We didn't stretch the hips in when we were on the back. And so fulfilling the need for a stretch there perhaps. And then if you want to, you can bend one knee and then the other. And just keep the forearms rooting into the mat so that you get a lift from the rooting. So parts of the body on the mat rooting and helping to lift the other parts of the body. And then land the feet again. Bring the hands beneath the shoulders, and let's bring a little more fluid movement to this party. Knees beneath hips, wrists beneath the shoulders, and on an inhale, bring the chest forward towards the gateway of the arms. Yeah, more door frames, more gateways. And then as you exhale, bring the belly button up towards the spine, rounding the back and starting to move between those two movements. The cow, where the chest comes forward, and the cat, where you round just like a cat. And then bringing your awareness into the hands and how the hands help you, even though there's a lot of dramatic movement in the vertebra, in the spine. Feeling the way that if you traction the hands slightly towards the knees as you bring the chest forward, you'll get a little more of a back bend. And as you move into cat, pushing the hands into the mat, engaging with the mat and feeling how that helps to lift the center of the upper back a little bit more. And so moving between those two movements and really feeling them out. And then the hands come forward 2 to 3 inches. Curl the toes under and bring the hips up and back. This is downward dog. And then feel this moment, the moment when those legs that have been stretching are now your support. You're now standing on your 2 feet and your 2 hands. So a sense of balance that you're being supported by both the feet and the hands, And then as you exhale, bring the knees back down towards the mat, and you can either land them, or if you're feeling like a little bit of a strength core sort of training, just let the knees hover for a moment and then straighten out the legs and come back to downward dog. And do that again. So knees can either come down to the mat, so you're sort of moving through fluid movements, or you can keep the knees hovering and then lift the hips up and back. So you're in downward dog again, and take a deep breath in. Bring the left leg slightly towards the center of the mat and stretch the right leg high up behind you. Now we've already taken quite a few hip and leg stretches here. So feeling out how this feels different, noting it's exactly the same posture we just took on our back, but now we're holding it on one leg and two hands. Bring the right knee in towards the chest and land the right foot to the inside of the right hand. And getting there by hook or by crook, we're going to move towards a lunge. You can bring the back knee down, so that's your left knee. And lifting up the upper body and then swinging the arms up by the ears, palms facing one another, feeling the biceps spinning in towards the ears, feeling that shin behind you, engaging with the mat. So remember that the hands could help you get a little more lift in your cat pose. Now feeling the shin behind you, giving you a little more lift, similar to the forearms, giving you that lift in the Sphinx. Arms by the ears, hands can come together above the head if that's comfortable on the shoulders, and then lifting the chest up towards the ceiling and finding a little bit of a back bend here. Take a deep breath here, feeling the lift as if someone's lifting you, as if someone has a hand between your shoulder blades and they're helping to lift you in the upper back. Feeling that coiling in the upper back, and then bring the upper back upright again, so the upper body's straight, and just shuffle the right foot forward in front of you. And you might want to pad the left knee. If the left knee is talking to you right now, then place a blanket, a cushion, a sweater beneath it. And then bring the right leg straight in front of you, right toes pointing towards the ceiling. And you can stay upright with the upper body, or as you exhale, start to bring the upper body forward, moving towards half split. So feeling that stretch now back along the back of the right leg. Take a deep breath here and then shuffle the right foot slightly towards you. Bend the knee, bring the hips forward and lift into a lunge here. So this should be slightly different from the last lunge because the hips are a little more forward. A little more stretch in the front of the left hip. And you could, as you exhale, bring the hands down towards the mat and bring the hips back so that they end up in line with the left knee. And bring the hands behind you, interlace them there, or bring the fists together there, or you could hold your yoga strap there and just get a little extra stretch in the front of the shoulders. And feeling that, the space from the front of one shoulder to the other, the shoulder blades coming together behind you, and then releasing the hands, upper body forward, hands on either side of the foot, and then lifting the left knee behind you. So you're in a low lunge, but the left knee's off the mat, and then just bring the right foot back to meet the left, and we're going to head back to downward facing dog. And then once you're in down dog, and take your time getting there, make the practice your own. Perhaps on an inhale, lifting the heels away from the mat as you exhale, letting the heels soften. And then really bringing your mind into the back of the ankles. So when we stretch the legs, we often think of the hamstrings, but the back of the ankles, the back of the calves, they like a good stretch too. And then lifting up the left leg high up behind you, find your three-legged dog on the left side. And deep breath here. When you lift one leg in your dog, don't let the hand on the same side lift. So the left hand might be trying to lift away from the mat, but keep it firmly down. And then bring the left knee in towards the chest, in, holding it there, and then land the left foot to the inside of the left hand and bring the right knee that is, onto the mat. You want to start with the left knee over the left ankle and perhaps pad the right knee behind you, and then lift the chest, coming up right with the chest into your lunge. Arms come by the ears, palms facing one another. Take a deep breath here, and already finding that space in the front of the right hip. And then the hands come together above the head, if that's comfortable on the shoulders, otherwise keeping them to palms facing one another, but palms away from one another. And then inhale, lift, lift, lift the chest as you come into the back bend. So thinking of your back bend as not as falling back, but as lifting the chest up high. And so you're finding that space above you, and perhaps the gaze has even lifted above you. So feeling the lift of this particular back bend, and then lifting up and out. So when you're coming out of your back bend, there's a sense that you're coming up and out, and then shuffle the right foot forward in front of you so that you have a long left leg. Your left leg, so you have a long left leg in front of you, left toes towards the ceiling, and you can keep the upper body upright, or as you exhale, bring the upper body forward so that the nose is sort of pointing beyond the left foot, but also to the midline of your mat. This is half split. And so that stretch in the back of the left leg, luxuriating into that, enjoying that, feeling that, fully, fully, fully. And then just shuffle the left leg ever so slightly back towards you, towards your body. Land the left foot flat on the mat, and then lift into your lunge here. And if you were looking for lunge where the hips are slightly forward of the right knee now, and so you might want to shuffle the left foot forward if that's not happening. So you're just getting a little bit more building that space and stretch into the front of the left leg. Arms come up by the ears. Take a deep breath here, and then as you exhale, bring the upper body forward, land the hands on the mat, and then curl the right toes under, lift the right knee up for a moment so that you're in a low lunge, but the back knee is lifted. And then from here, we're going to step the left foot back and come back to downward facing dog. And then the hands, the gaze comes between the hands, and you have the option, you can either hop forward if that's in your practice. I'll instruct that when we get to our first sun salutation A, or you can step the feet forward, and now the weight is fully in the feet, letting the upper body just drape over the legs and swinging perhaps side to side with the upper body, or perhaps landing the hands on blocks or on your shins and just bending one knee and then the other. And then just for a moment, shaking the head, nodding the head yes, shaking it no, and getting a sense of release in the neck, in the head. And I know that some of you like it when I say this, thinking of the head now as the smartest weight in the body. So using your head as a weight to just bring a little more length into the back. The smartest weight, the smartest prop in the body. And bring the hand to the shins, and then as you inhale, coming up to your half fold, and then lifting all the way up to standing and starting to feel that strength that you're standing in your own 2 feet and finding mountain pose now. So your mountain pose might be feet hips width distance apart, outside edges of the feet parallel to the edges of your mat, or they could be toes together, heels apart, outside edges of the feet parallel still to the edges of your mat, and then the hands, the palms face forward. So there's a sense of opening in the front of the shoulders, but without back bending. So being aware of the placement of the body in mountain pose. And then we're going to take sun salutation A, and I'll give modifications as we go through. And then inhale, the arms come up by the ears, palms facing one another. As you exhale, palms come together above the head and drawing them down your midline in front of you, letting the upper body fold into your big forward fold as you come down with the hands too. Inhale, coming to your half fold, and here really feeling a sense of engagement in the belly as you come to your half fold, and as you exhale, folding back down. Hands come to the outside of the feet, and then stepping back to plank. So knees can come to the mat in plank if you like, but really for a moment, feeling the core engage, whichever position the legs are in. So heels pushing back towards the space behind you if the knees are lifted, crown of the head moving forward, and keep breathing. And keep, I know, it's easy to hold your breath for a moment in postures like these. We're nearly there. We're just going to be here for another breath or so. And then as you exhale, bend the elbows towards the space behind you and bring yourself down to the mat. Hands come by the lower ribs, fingers pointing forward. And on an inhale, lifting up into your baby cobra. So really have a sense that the elbows continue to firm towards one another as you lift into baby cobra, and that the tops of the feet continue to engage with the mat as you lift into baby cobra. And you can stay here. It's a really beautiful pose for strengthening the upper back, or you can push into the hands and start to lift the legs away from the mat. This is upward facing dog. In upward dog, you want to make sure you're not locking out the elbows. You want to make sure that there's space from the front of one shoulder to the front of the other, and that the hands, the wrists are beneath the shoulders. If the wrists are not beneath the shoulders in your upward facing dog, you'll be able to feel that you can't quite bring the chest forward. There's less mobility in the back if the arms are in the wrong place. So make sure that the wrists are beneath the shoulders, and then curling over the toes, and find your way back to downward facing dog. Anytime we're in down dog, you can come to child's pose. So that's toes together, knees apart, and bringing the knees to the mat and the hips back towards the heels. And so holding child's or downward dog for just a couple of breaths. If you're in child's, we're going to head towards the front of the mat, so you can head there from child. Gaze comes to the front of the mat, and if you're in down dog, feet slightly closer together, bend the knees, lift the hips on the inhale, and as you exhale, either walk the feet forward, or you can spring and hop the feet forward, landing in your deep forward fold. And if you're in child's, finding your way there too. Inhale, coming to your half fold, exhaling back down, and inhaling, rising all the way up to standing, unfolding the arms, stretching the fingers towards the ceiling, palms still facing one another, and then land the hands by the sides. And then we'll take one more like that. I'm going to try and talk less, but give you all the options. So on an inhale, the arms come up by the ears, palms facing one another. Exhale, folding down, so you're in your forward fold. Inhale, half fold. Exhaling back down, and then as you exhale, you can either step back to plank, or if you want to hop back to low plank, gaze stays forward, weight of the head stays forward, and elbows bend towards the back of your space as you hop and try and land in your half plank. So in your half plank, elbows over wrists, shoulders in line with the elbows, or you can come all the way down to the mat and then find your way to your back bend of choice, which could be baby cobra or it could be upward facing dog. And then curling over the toes and bringing it home, bringing it back to either downward dog or child's pose. Taking just a couple of breaths there to land, a couple of breaths there to just exhale into the posture. Feeling, bend the knees slightly, lift the hips any amount more towards the corner of the wall and ceiling behind you. And then we're going to move it into a crescent lunge followed by warrior two. Let's start on the left side. So left leg stretches high up behind you. Bring the left knee in towards the chest. Land the left foot between the arms. Turn the back foot down so it's flat on the mat. Make sure that the left heel is in line with the right arch, and then spiral it open to warrior two. Hands are around shoulder height, well, around, they're at shoulder height. Palms are facing down and gaze is over the left hand, steady and strong. And if it doesn't feel like this quite landed, then just straighten the left knee, adjust the distance between the feet. Feel the outer edge of your right foot steady on the mat, and then come back in, warrior two. Gaze over the left hand, take a deep breath here, and then inhale, lift the left hand up towards the ceiling, and right hand comes down towards the back leg. And as you do that, really make sure you don't unbend the left knee. So you want to keep that bend in the left knee. So the feet are a steady foundation, the legs are a steady foundation for this posture. And then as you exhale, bringing the upper body up and forward towards your side angle lunge. Right hand radiates out towards the space behind you like a star, and then comes over the ear, palm facing down. And then make sure in side angle lunge that the chest isn't turning kind of down towards the left knee. You want to keep the chest facing to the side. That's where the strength comes in. There's a little side plankishness in this posture. The left side is really engaged in the body here. Take a breath here. And then that star, the right arm moves back towards the space behind you. You can even follow it with your gaze and then bring it down towards the mat. So it's coming like an arm of a clock round and towards the mat, and turn the chest down towards the mat. And then adjust the feet slightly, walk the feet, left foot slightly to the left, and lift up again, this time with the chest facing forward. So now you're in crescent lunge. Arms come up by the ears, palms facing one another. And then as you exhale, start to straighten the left knee and bring the upper body forward so that it's parallel to the mat. And this is your pyramid. So you can use blocks for pyramid. You do want to make sure that the feet are hips width distance apart for pyramid. Otherwise it will feel like you're trying to balance on a balance beam. And that's not what we're aiming for in pyramid. You want a sense of steadiness in the legs. And then just draw the left hip slightly back. So just as in the first posture I mentioned that the lifted leg, the hip on that side will try and hike up towards the armpit. That same thing happens in this posture too. And so bringing the left hip back slightly so it's in line with the right hip. Take a deep breath here and then rebend the left knee, and let's lift it to crescent lunge and move with the breath a little more. So as you exhale, coming forward to pyramid again. And one more time, lifting up to crescent lunge on the inhale, coming forward to pyramid on the exhale. And then moving the blocks out of the way if you're using them. Hands come to the mat and stepping back to plank, low plank with the knees up or down, upward facing dog and downward facing dog. And if you would like to, taking just a few breaths in child's pose here, or close, try closing the eyes in the down dog. So you're still working into your down dog, but taking the gaze out of it and feeling the posture from the inside for just a moment. And in child's, the eyes closed is always awfully nice in child's pose. Okay. If you're a child, stay there if you'd like, or rejoin us, your choice. And then bring the left foot towards the middle of your mat and stretch the right foot high up behind you. And then bring the right knee forward and land the right foot between the hands. And then bring the left foot flat onto the mat, and we're going to open up into warrior two. To swing the left arm behind you, right arm is in front of you, and take a deep breath there and land in warrior two. And landing in warrior two might on this side also involve straightening the right leg now, adjusting the distance between the feet so you have a steady base for your warrior two. Make sure that the right foot's pointing forward and that the knee, as you bend it, tracks out towards the second toe. And then for those of you who are working your warrior two or want to go a little deeper, what you want to aim for is the front thigh parallel to the mat without back bending and with that strength in the back leg still. So even as your attention comes to what's happening in the right thigh, you want to also make sure that the foundation of this posture and the back leg stays strong. Take a deep breath here and then just drift the left hand towards the ceiling. Sorry, the left hand towards the legs, the right hand goes towards the ceiling. Hold it here. This is your reverse warrior. And then exhale, bringing it forward. So upper body comes up and forward as you move into your side angle lunge. And then the left hand stretches behind you, lifts towards the ceiling and comes over the ear, palm down. And this is your side angle lunge. And it's, as I've mentioned before, a secret strengthening pose. So it really involves working into the strength of the muscles of the side of the upper body, as well as the legs, as well as that left arm. You can probably feel that left arm holding above you. And then moving the left hand behind you, following it with your gaze perhaps, bringing it down towards the mat and forward, and then land the hands on either side of the right foot and adjust the right foot slightly to the right so that you have your feet hips width distance apart now, and then lifting up to crescent lunge from here. And then in your crescent lunge, it's kind of in the end the same thing as warrior two. As you work and build strength in your crescent lunge, then the front thigh starts to become more and more parallel to the mat. Take a breath here, arms by the ears, palms facing one another, and then we're going to bring it forward on the exhale towards pyramid. So straightening the front leg and bringing the upper body forward, landing the hands on one or two blocks, that can be helpful. And then adjusting, so that in your first pyramid, really working out where the hips are. Is the right hip hiking forward towards the right armpit, in which case bring it back into line. Bring it back into line. And then feel where the midline of this posture is, that it's aligned, that the midline of the upper body is aligned with the midline of the mat. So the upper body is not off-roading to the left or right. And then rebend the right knee and bring yourself up to crescent lunge again, and now flowing it more. So we're going to take two more pyramids and flowing forward into your pyramid on your exhale, and then lifting into your crescent lunge, and then feeling the way the space and stretch shifts in the legs as you shift between these two postures, which are really glorious postures for feeling stretch in the front of the back hip and back of the front leg. Take a breath, and when you're back in pyramid, and then bring your hands to the mat and bring the right foot back, and then you can go plank, low plank, up dog, down dog, or you can go no muss, no fuss, straight back to down dog or child's. And then bring the shoulders forward over the wrists and bring the knees to the mat, and then bring the whole body, front body down to the mat. So now I'm going to give you two choices. So this for Friday when we're filming this, so that means it's hashtag forearm plank Friday. So you can either take forearm plank or you can take crocodile. And so, if you're watching the recording later, it's obviously going to be hashtag forearm plank, whatever day of the week it is for you, forearm plank Tuesday, etc. But make a choice here. So if you've had this sort of busy week, rushing around, and the yoga for you right now would be to settle and move towards crocodile. So hands stack, palms down, forehead on the hands. Or if you're going to take forearm plank, that's a little bit more of a strong pose, but you're still looking for that same sense of calm. It's there in the center of the storm of your forearm plank. It's just about finding it. So those of you who are going to crocodile, go there. Those of you who are going to forearm plank, bring your arms parallel in front of you, your forearms, and then lift the belly away from the mat. So the knees are still down, and now lift the knees up. So making sure the shoulders are over the elbows. If you're in crocodile, making sure the shoulders are wide and relaxed behind you. If in forearm plank, you need to bring the knees down, that is fine. If you need to come out and come back in, that is fine. But you want to aim like week by week to be able to stay longer in your forearm plank, if that is your practice. And so heels pushing behind you in your forearm plank, crown of the head moving forward so that you're long, like a strong stretched elastic band in the body. And then the gaze is between the hands. So you want to sense that the back of the neck is long and the U is strong. And in your crocodile, that is, muscularly a less effortful pose, but it's still a strong pose. the ability to stay there and soften there. Continuing to sort of adjust, bring your mind to different parts of the body in your forearm plank. Inner thighs spinning up towards the ceiling, and then knees to the mat, and bringing the entire upper body down to the mat, and joining our friends in crocodile. So hands stacked, forehead on the back of the hands, and then just letting the heels sort of just drift apart, letting them roll away from each other, and the inner thighs roll up towards the ceiling. Really, really nice work, whichever posture you took. And then if you now lift yourself up, we're going to go towards a back bend. So a back bend is a good counter pose for forearm plank, but it's also just a good practice generally to sort of build strength into the upper back. And today we're going to take baby cobra and work with that. But if you have another prone back bend, a back bend on the belly that you'd like to take, feeling free to go there. And it might be bow, for example, or locust. So hands come to the lower ribs, fingers pointing forward, and we're going to take 3 of these. So bringing the shoulder blades together, firming the elbows towards one another, and then lifting the chest away from the mat. Really keeping the legs engaged. We're going to take 3 back bends. You could take a full minute of baby cobra if you want to. And then really make sure the glutes aren't engaging and pulling towards one another. So the way to address that is to just feel the inner thigh spinning up towards the ceiling. And as you exhale, bring the chest down. Left cheek comes down to the mat. If you want to move towards the locust, you can stretch the arms out long by the hips, palms down. Or you can stay in baby cobra and lift into a second baby cobra. And see if you can lift any amount higher this time. If you're feeling any pinching at all in the lower back especially, then move towards Sphinx, which we took early on in the practice, forearms in front of you. So you have a little more support in front of you. Otherwise, holding baby cobra or locust. And as you exhale, bringing your upper body down, right cheek on the mat. It just occurred to me that we have a little bit of a zoo going on here. A mythical sphinx, a cobra, or a locust. And then inhale, lifting the chest up away from the mat, feeling the elbows firm towards one another if you're baby cobraing, feeling the arms lift and float if you're in locust, palms come away from the mat, and feeling the forearms steady if you're in sphinx. Inhale, lift any amount more. And then as you exhale, bring the upper body down to the mat. So that is your forearm plank Friday, etc. Done. Okay, bring the hands beneath the shoulders and lift the hips up and back. And we're going to work into the splits a little bit more. And so this practice with splits, which is called Hanumanasana in Sanskrit, is one where you really have to tune into where your body is. I'll give you lots of options. And so stopping at the point that is comfortable for your body, where you're at an edge, where you're working, where you're stretching, where you're working into the posture, but not going beyond that edge. Don't jump off a cliff in a yoga class, it's not worth it. And so bringing your knees onto the mat, and you may want to pad the knees here if you'd like to. And blocks are pretty useful, but if you don't have blocks, then you can use substitutes, books, you could use the seat of a chair or the wall, just bringing your hand to the wall. And so moving to yourself to a position where you have support that you need. And then we're going to step the right foot forward and start off in crescent lunge. We did this earlier, so it will feel familiar to the body. And then starting to feel that stretch in the front of the left hip behind you. And then shuffle the right foot forward ever so slightly. And you want to still keep the hips in line with each other and the same distance from the mat. And then shuffle the foot forward even more. And you'll feel more and more of a stretch in the back of the front of the left hip. And then one more time, shuffle forward. But don't go forward so much that the hips really start, the sides of the hips really start misaligning from each other. And then feel that the shin behind you, the left shin, really engaging with the mat. And now, if you like, you can bend the left knee and lift the left foot off the mat and swim the right hand behind you to grab that foot. And then turn the chest forward. Take a breath here. And you can always lift the knee, bring the hand to the hip, or keep the left shin down too. And then inhale, lifting up and out of the pose, and bringing the hips back now, bringing the right leg long in front of you. So this is half splits. We also visited this earlier, and you can bring your hands to blocks now to keep a little lift in the upper chest if you'd like to. And then you can either work here and work on getting stretch in the back of that left hip, of the right hip and the right leg, or you can start to shuffle the right foot forward and then come it towards splits. So you're either working half splits or you're working into your full split. Whatever you're doing, the mind is like really in the sensation of the body and feeling out the sensations in the body. And you might come halfway, you might just shuffle the right leg a little bit forward, in which case a wall and your blocks are really important. So you keep the weight out of that back knee and keep steady. Take a breath here. And then if you are in a fuller split, so moving towards that, bring the right foot back. And you'll need to lean into the mat or into your blocks to do that. And bring yourself upright. Bring the right knee by the left knee, hands to the mat, and then taking some stretches there with your cats and your cows. And once again, how far you go into the splits is not an indication of level of enlightenment or anything like that. It's just about getting a really nice stretch in the hips, and where that point where a really nice stretch is going to be different for everybody depending on your hip structure and your bone structure. So let's go to the second side, and that's what you're seeking: stretch, not pain, not aiming for goals, but more aiming for the feeling of the posture. Okay, so we're going to bring the left foot forward now. Take a deep breath here, and then start to shuffle it a little bit more forward, making sure that you're holding on to some support. And as you shuffle forward, you'll feel a little more, bring the hips forward with the leg. It's as if the tailbone is attached to the back of the front ankle. So you're keeping the tailbone sort of down. And that sense, when your tailbone moves out of alignment, is where you stop. And then bring the left foot back, so it's definitely beneath the left knee. And if you like, you can bend the right knee, really making sure there's no pain in the knee, and bring the left hand back to grab the right foot. Or you can keep that right foot down and put the left hand on the hip, in which case you'll get a nice stretch in the front of the left shoulder, which is part of what I desire for you, and a lot of what I desire for you right now. And then lifting up and out, so the hips come up and out, straightening the left leg in front of you. And then you can either work here with the half split, which is a really nice and beautiful stretch, and it's strengthening too, or you can start to shuffle the left foot forward. And one tip I'll give you if you're working with this stretch is that it's good to bring the front foot off the front of your mat. And the reason for that is that your yoga mat is designed to provide traction. Most of them are, rather than slide. There are some that allow slide. And so if you bring your foot off the front of the mat, then it will be easier to slide it around. And then start to slide it back in. And everybody bringing the left knee by the right, feeling like there's a sense of evenness now that you've taken those stretches on both sides. And on an inhale, bringing the chest forward. As you exhale, belly button up towards the spine. Really nice work, whatever you did there. And then bringing the hands forward in front of you. If you were in child's pose the whole time, really big kudos to you too. Curl the toes under, lift the hips up and back. So you're in downward dog just for a breath. and then bring the right knee towards the right hand wrist. And I'll give you an alternative in a moment. Shuffle the left foot back, watch where it's going to make sure it's not going off to the edge of, to the left edge of your mat or anything like that, to make sure the ankle's not buckling, and then coming forward towards half pigeon. So you can bring the chest all the way down to the mat. You can stay on your forearms, you can stay pretty lifted, whatever works, but definitely put some padding beneath the right hip if it's floating up. And now if you prefer not to take half pigeon, because it does put weight on the front knee, then just swinging the legs down around and coming towards a seated figure 4. So the legs are in front of you, feet are on the mat, walk the legs away from you a little bit, and then cross the, I'll show you from this angle so you can see the legs. My right shin and the outside of it is across the left thigh. And so then from there, you can walk the left foot in towards the hips. Those of you in half pigeon, enjoy luxuriate in your half pigeon. And those of you in seated figure 4, you're getting exactly, at least a very, very similar stretch on the outside of the right hip, but without that weight on the front knee. Another reason to take the seated version is if when you come to half pigeon, you really feel that the two sides of the hips are uneven, then this version is in the end going to be better for your lower back and for your sacrum, because the hips have to be even because they're sitting on the mat. Okay, and so everyone, if you're in seated figure 4 or half pigeon, starting to move towards downward dog. So lifting yourself up out of your half pigeon, swinging your legs behind you. If you're in the seated figure 4, curling the toes under and lifting the hips up and back, and then lifting the right leg high up behind you, bending the knee and stacking the right hip over the left. And so holding it here, just to get a counter stretch. And then lengthening the right leg and bring the right foot down to the mat. And then starting to move into half pigeon on the second side. If that was what you did on the first side, things might be different on this side. You may want to sit up on this side if you have an issue with the left knee, for example. And then coming into your half pigeon on this second side. I gave you a tip on Wednesday, which in half pigeon is the posture where this really, really works well. I'll give you it again in a moment, but just to remind, if you're sitting up, the left shin is now over the right thigh. So you're in your figure 4 there. So if you have one side that feels a little tighter, like half pigeon's a little harder on the hip on one side, then note that. And then when we practice, or you practice half pigeon with someone else, start on that side. Then move to the second side and then come back to the side that feels tight. So you spend less time in the side that feels tight at a time, but more time, a little more time overall. So that can start to bring a little sense of evenness. Okay, so that's your tip. Taking a breath here, relaxing into your half pigeon. Or your seated figure 4, enjoying that space on the outside of the left hip. After the little bit of a workout that we gave the hips. And then let's swing the legs round behind you if you're sitting up. Moving towards your downward dog if you're in half pigeon, lying with the chest out. And then as you reach, everyone reaches downward dog, stretching the left leg up long behind you. So you're in your 3-legged dog, and then bend the left knee, stack the left side of the hip on the right. And then stretching the left leg long again, land the left foot, bring the feet forward. Some of you may want to hop into a seated position, and crossing the right shin in front of the left. Or you can just, no muss, no fuss, find your way to a seated position without hopping, without fanciness, and have the legs long in front of you. And take a forward fold out of here. So bring the hands, you may want to sit up on something, a cushion or a blanket here is really useful, especially if you know you tend to round into the back. Another thing that's useful, by the way, for that is to sit next to a wall and use the wall to, not to support, but to guide your staff pose. So this is called the staff pose, Dandasana. And on an inhale, feeling length along both sides of the waist. And as you exhale, bringing the upper body forward to your degree. And that might be being sure to keep a bend to the knees, especially if you tend to lock out the knees or hyperextend into the knees. The arms might reach the feet, they might reach the shins, they might be supporting you in still a pretty upright position with the upper body. Wherever you are is fine with forward folds, as with half split. It really depends on the structure of your joints. That's what you're working with. And that's going to be different for everybody. And then lifting up and out of your staff pose, grab the back of the left knee, fold the left knee and bring the left heel towards the hip. Inhale, lift in the upper body. As you exhale, start to twist to the left. So you're twisting in the same direction as the bent knee. And then you can hug the left knee with the right arm. Bring the left hand behind you so you have some support there. It could be on a block, it could be on the wall. And then just roll the shoulders up and out, up and behind you. And feel the shoulder blades coming together a little bit behind you. So there's a lift. There's a little bit of the sort of pride of up dog in this posture. That sort of a lift in the chest, even as you twist. And then as you exhale, coming back to center, lengthening out the left leg, shaking out the knees, and bringing the right heel in towards the right hip. And then find length on both sides of the waist before you start to turn into the twist. Right hand is behind you, lifting, supporting. You can hug the left knee. Some of you might have brought the elbow to the outside of the right knee. A bit discombobulated with my left and right. But we're turning to the right and hugging the right knee with the left hand, the left arm. And then with each inhale, finding length in the twist. With each exhale, turning just even a tiny bit more. Making sure the left foot, the long leg, the foot attached to the straight leg is toes pointed towards the ceiling right now. And then coming back to the middle, bend the knees, feet are by each other, shuffle the hips slightly towards the heels, touching the back of the heels with the middle finger and then rolling down. And so you want to keep the feet in a position where you can touch the heels with the middle finger. Feet are hips width distance apart, outer edges of the feet are parallel to the edges of your mat. And then as you inhale, push into the feet and shoulders and lift the hips up away from the mat. And you can interlace the fingers beneath you if you like to do that in your bridge, or you can hold the edges of your mat with the arms straight. But if you do that, hold the edges of your mat or you interlace the fingers, you want to use the upper arms to get just a little more lift in the chest. And then as you exhale, letting the upper body just drape down onto your mat, lengthen down onto your mat. And then we'll take that again. Inhale, push into the feet, start to lift the hips up away from the mat. And then as you exhale, coming down out of your bridge, bringing your knees in towards the chest, and then letting the knees just drift, just roll to the right as the arms expand and bringing your arms to a T at shoulder height. And then letting the gaze turn towards the left shoulder. And softening into the twist. And then bringing the knees back to center and letting them just roll the other way. So really enjoying the feel of the floor of the mat on the back of the hips as the knees now move to the left. And then the gaze in the face, turning to the right. Just lengthening. Moving away from efforting, muscleizing into the posture. And now just letting the body land in your twist. And then bringing the knees back to center, land the feet on the mat. And you can either, for your final resting pose, take the knees together, heels apart, so the knees are still bent. So you would be going back to constructive rest, the same posture we started with. That can feel really nice on the lower back, or you can lengthen out the legs and just let the toes roll away from each other. Arms to any comfortable position. That could be hands on the belly with the elbows bent or arms long by the side. Letting the eyelids close softly over the eyes. Taking a moment of complete rest of Shavasana. If you would like to stay in Shavasana longer, open invitation to do so. You might want to set a timer, just stay in for 5 to 10 minutes. If you're ready to move off the mat, turning the knees and toes up towards the ceiling, and then bending the knees one at a time and bringing them in towards the chest. For a moment, hugging the knees and legs, perhaps rocking side to side, perhaps a few more breaths in stillness, hearing the sounds around you. Here in Boston, we have a beautiful rain outside right now. And then as you exhale, rolling onto one side or the other and finding your way up to a comfortable seated position. And then the arms come to a T at shoulder height, palms up. On an inhale, lifting the arms up until the palms meet above the head. As you exhale, hands come down through your midline, thumbs land on the sternum. Thank you for being here this morning. It was so lovely to see you all. Wishing you all a really wonderful weekend and a wonderful rest of your Friday. Thank you all. Goodbye.